the future, or we could say the future tenses, and this is part one. In another video we'll look at some more difficult tenses that also describe the future. Let's look at the basics here, and we have two sentences here, and one is a prediction and one is a plan. So it will rain and I will go skiing, and what you should see here is that this is actually a prediction and this one is a plan. And the way you tell the difference is that predictions will be dealing with things that are out of our control. So rain, for example, the weather is something that's not under our control, whereas whether we go skiing or not is presumably something we can control. Let's look at a table which deals with this in a little bit more detail. You can see that for both plans and predictions we can use will, and you see that here. So I'm using purple for predictions and yellow for plans in this video. Now the other way you can do it is with a be verb, any be verb plus going to, and again for predictions it's possible. Now the main difference, I guess, one of the main differences is that you can use a be verb plus any verb in the ing form, whereas for predictions you can't do it. Let's go down and look at some examples here. And so it's 12:30, I will have lunch soon. In this example, I've used pink just to show you what form of verb that you should have. Obviously after will, which is a modal, you should have an infinitive, which we do have here. It could have been eat, I will eat lunch. What we have here is a person that's made a plan, that's why I've used yellow for plans, made a plan spontaneously. That means that they haven't thought about it in the past. They've looked at their watch, they've seen that it's 12:30, and they've decided to have lunch soon. So it's like at the time of speaking, you're making your plan. If we look at the second one, I'm going to have lunch at Bistro C. By using going to with a be verb, and then obviously the infinitive here after to, we are assuming that this person has thought about where they would like to eat before they've spoken. So you've made your plan at some point in the past. That could have been, I guess, 5 minutes ago, or an hour, or a day, or a month, and so on, further back in time. If we look at the third one, we have what's called, I'll just read it first. I am having lunch with Russell Crowe. This is an arrangement. It's sometimes difficult to see the difference between going to and an arrangement, but I guess you could say in general that arrangements are when you involve other people, and it's a very fixed sort of plan. So if you're having lunch with Russell Crowe, he's a very famous, important Australian actor, and you would need to book that in a long time in advance, and you would be very serious about it, making sure that you're there. So that's a good example of an arrangement. But booking a flight or accommodation somewhere, a hotel somewhere, would also be a good example of an arrangement. Another example might be something like I'm having smoked salmon for dinner. Now, if the smoked salmon, or I'm having smoked salmon for dinner. If the smoked salmon was in your refrigerator, you've already bought it, so that you can clearly see that it's a very well prepared plan, then we could also, I guess, call that an arrangement as well, because something has already been purchased. Let's move on to the next part, which is the use of predictions. So here we have in purple, it's going to be will and be, or be verb plus going to. Orlando will vomit, and Orlando's face is green, he is going to vomit. Now, the difference here is that we are using will for predictions when we sort of feel it in our heart, or we have a lot of experience with Orlando. So let's say he's about to get onto a bus, and it's a 1 hour drive on the bus. You know from experience that Orlando likes to throw up when he sits on a bus, even for, say, 10 minutes. So you're quite confident, you have experience, and so it's kind of an internal knowledge that what's going to happen in the future is that Orlando will vomit on the bus. Now, you're driving along in the bus, you've been going for 20 minutes now, and you look at Orlando and you say to your friend, Orlando's face is green, he is going to vomit. Now here you're much more certain that he's going to vomit because you have the present evidence, the evidence that he's going to vomit, and that is that his face is green. I guess this whole thing, the face, you see the face right now is green, you have the evidence, it's right here in front of you, so you're going to use is going to. Whereas in the case above with will vomit, there's no evidence. Orlando looks fine as he's getting on the bus. There's nothing present, there's no evidence that he's going to vomit. I mean, the same could be said if you wanted to talk about the weather. If you looked outside and you saw black clouds in the sky, you would say it's going to rain because there's present evidence. If I said, I think it will rain tomorrow, I don't have present evidence. So that's a good general rule to use, present evidence, or sometimes called outside evidence. So something that can be seen, I suppose you could say. Now, you can't say this, Orlando is vomiting soon. You cannot use ing to talk about the future. And of course, if we look at our table again, that's what our table says. Do not use ing for predictions. Sorry, not talking about the future, but for predictions. You can use it for plans. Let's move to the next one. And Roger Federer will win against Lopez. I feel it in my heart. So here we've used will. It's a prediction. And he said, I feel it in my heart. So there's no evidence. Perhaps you're walking into the stadium. The match hasn't even begun yet. And this is what you say to your friend because you just feel it deeply that Federer will beat Lopez. Then, of course, the match begins and it's match point. Lopez, or the commentator may say this, it's match point. Lopez has just slipped and fallen. Federer is going to win. Well, if it's match point, it means Federer only needs to win this point in order to win in the match. So if Lopez is lying on the ground and Federer is about to smash the ball, that's very present evidence that Federer is about to win or is going to win. So again, just an example of outside evidence or present evidence. Moving to something different now, we're looking at plans that haven't really been mentioned above in our table. So we've only got going to in the ing and will for plans. Now we're looking at something a little bit more here, and we're looking at a very formal way of making plans. So I'll just make a note of that. A very formal way of announcing a plan or saying something that is planned. So the judge's decision on the copyright infringement case is to be announced later today. So it's this structure here, is to be. Now this is also passive as well. It's worth noting that this is passive. So is to be, very formal, and then that will be followed by, in this case, past participle because it is passive. Let's move to the next one. The Queen is to arrive at noon. We see the is to with the infinitive here, and again, very formal, and this one's not in the passive, it's an active structure. Let's go to the next point, and we're looking at the present simple here, so I might just write that, the present simple, to talk about things in the future. And tomorrow is January, so when we're talking about dates, calendar dates, we can use the present simple. And the flight arrives at 3:45. I'll just might write here schedules. So schedules, train schedules, or whatever you like, or schedules, however you like to pronounce that. So present simple for schedules or schedules. When we finish, we will eat. So here we have a time clause, when we finish. You could have also used a conditional here. So if I was to write if we finish, you're not so sure now if you will finish. So if we finish, same as so we will eat. So if you know your conditionals at all, you'll see that that is actually a, I believe, first conditional. So we can use the present simple in time clauses, and also in the first conditional we can also use the present simple to talk about what would happen in the future. Now, here we have Oscar flies to Rome after he has completed his business in Milan. Now, this is something that you're just sort of telling somebody else. You're not really involved in this, but it's not a prediction. It's talking about someone else's plans. So it is outside your control, yet at the same time, it's not a prediction. Okay, so that is all we have in the first part one of the future tenses video. In the next video on the future, we'll look at future perfect and future continuous, and they're a little bit more complex. So hopefully you will watch that video as well.